Hey, this is Wayne Turmel from the Remote Leadership Institute, and today I want to get a little bit personal with you and share a story that not a lot of you probably know. And I tell this story to answer the question, can you build really good business relationships virtually, whether that's with your customers or with your teammates or whomever? And so that's the question we're going to answer. And I'm going to give you both a non-business example and some statistics, and then a very specific, very personal business example. All right. Can you make a relationship last? Well, can you make a relationship last anyway? Right? If you think about marriages that have gone on a long time, there are some interesting statistics right now about relationships that begin or are maintained virtually. Interestingly enough, according to a number of sources, almost 40% of current heterosexual long-term relationships began online. That's kind of interesting. As a data point, and completely irrelevant, that number actually goes up to about 60% for LGBT relationships. I'm not going to hazard a guess why, but it's simply a fact that a lot of people are making relationships work that at least began online. And interestingly enough, of those relationships that began online, the divorce rate is actually lower than it is for people who met in more traditional ways. Kind of an interesting, and again, I'm not entirely sure why, but I've got some guesses. The point I guess I'm trying to make is that long distance relationships actually have a over 50% satisfaction rate. Now we're talking here about personal relationships. We're not talking about working relationships. So, okay, Wayne, how do we know that we can make a long distance virtual relationship work? Well, I am kind of living proof of this. If you have read The Long Distance Leader, or you plan to read The Long Distance Teammate, or frankly, you're watching this video, you are watching the result of a long-distance relationship between myself and Kevin Eikenberry that, so far at least, unless you know something I don't, has stood the test of time. How did we do that? Well, it started, 10 years ago now at least, when I had my podcast, The Cranky Middle Manager Show, and I invited some guy who I didn't know but had a pretty decent book called Remarkable Leadership, and we began to chat. And I interviewed him 4 or 5 times over the years, and in fact, we only met face-to-face fewer than half a dozen times in all of that time. I was living in Chicago, he was living in Indianapolis. But there's a bunch of things that happened. One is we had common interests, not the least of which is we both have a tendency to quote country and western lyrics. We had a similar approach to what we thought leadership was and what people's responsibilities as employees and employers might be. While we were doing kind of transactional business stuff, I was interviewing him, we would write back and forth, we took the time to indulge in personal conversation. Turns out we kind of liked each other. While we are very different people, we have a fair amount in common. We grew up in small towns. We have similar kind of demographic backgrounds, that kind of thing. When we had the chance to meet, which was like once a year at ATD conferences kind of thing, we took advantage of it. And as we started to collaborate on some projects without knowing what it would turn into, we developed a high level of trust in each other. And ultimately, that's what it takes to make a virtual relationship work. You need to have common goals, you need to have trust, you need to communicate frequently, and you need to communicate richly. That means use your webcam, share your data, that kind of thing. So if there is a lesson today, it is that relationships, virtual relationships, can work and thrive. And if you've been taking advantage of some of the resources at Remote Leadership Institute or at the Kevin Eikenberry Group, you've kind of seen that in action. So I just wanted to share that with you today in answer to that question. That's really it. Think about what makes your virtual relationships work. Do you and your teammates have common goals? What's the level of trust? How frequently are you communicating, and are you communicating in a rich way that helps form bonds? If you've enjoyed this video, if you enjoy what we do, please continue to visit the remoteleadershipinstitute.com. Take advantage of our free resources as well as opportunities like 12 weeks to being a great remote teammate, where we talk about how to form those bonds. That's it. Wash your hands. Don't let the weasels get you down. Have a great day.